Hi everyone, if you're struggling not getting success, then this video is for you. Nowadays, there's one truth in life that nobody can change. Your success is in your hands. It is not in the hands of luck. The only person who has the power to decide your future is you. But the question is, do you believe in yourself? Today, we'll talk about it. My name is Muniba Mazari, and I'm a motivational speaker. If you find this video fruitful, then you can appreciate me by like and subscribe and start a new journey with me. Let's start the topic. There are moments in life when the doors we so desperately want to walk through are slammed shut. We knock, we plead, we even cry silently, hoping that someone, somewhere, will hear our heartbeat echo through the cracks. But silence answers. And we call it rejection. Rejection is a word we often associate with failure. We let it define us. We let it convince us that we're not good enough, not worthy enough, not capable enough. But what if I told you that rejection is not the end of your story? It is, in fact, the universe whispering, there's another way. It is redirection, dressed in the clothes of disappointment. Rejection often feels personal, sharp, and final. It enters our lives like a gust of cold wind, unexpected and unwelcome. When someone says no, when an opportunity slips away, when something you work so hard for doesn't materialize, it's natural to question your worth. You start wondering, what did I do wrong? Or worse, what is wrong with me? The mind begins to weave painful stories of inadequacy, and the heart absorbs each word as truth. But rejection, when stripped of emotion and ego, is rarely about your value. It's often about alignment. It's about timing, fit, and unseen paths that are still unfolding. We live in a world where we've been conditioned to associate acceptance with value. We believe if someone says yes to us, it means we're good enough. If a job offer comes, if a door opens, if applause follows our actions, it means we are seen, validated, and approved. But what about the times when we do not get that yes? Does that erase our talent? Does it mean our dreams are foolish or misplaced? It does not. The absence of validation is not the absence of value. The external world may not always recognize your light, but that doesn't mean you're not shining. Sometimes rejection is not there to hurt you, but to protect you. It's life's way of telling you that the thing you so desperately wanted is not meant for who you're becoming. It's hard to see that in the moment when your heart is heavy and your hands are empty. But with time and reflection, you often realize that the things you were denied made space for the things that were truly right for you. Can be the beginning of a better, yes, but only if you are willing to see beyond the pain of the moment. The value you bring into the world is not negotiable. It doesn't fluctuate based on outcomes. Whether someone chooses you or not, whether a dream materializes or fades, your worth remains. It is not earned through acceptance or diminished by rejection. It is something you carry by virtue of being you. You were born enough, and nothing that happens in the external world can take that away from you. Rejection does not reduce your essence. It redirects your path. It's easy to internalize rejection, to let it create self-doubt and silence your voice. But it is in those moments you must remind yourself, the door that closed was not your only chance. You are not limited to one route, one opportunity, one outcome. Sometimes we become so attached to what we think we want that we miss the quiet pull of what we truly need. And rejection, though painful, creates a pause. It forces you to step back, reassess, and reconnect with your deeper purpose. When you begin to see rejection through this lens, you start to release the shame that often accompanies it. You stop seeing yourself as a failure and start understanding that the situation simply wasn't in alignment with your highest path. You don't need to fight for places that do not see your worth. You don't need to keep knocking on doors that remain shut. Instead, you can turn inward, strengthen your foundation, and trust that something more aligned is waiting. Not being chosen does not mean you are not worthy of being seen. It simply means you are meant to be seen elsewhere in a space that honors your truth, your voice, and your journey. You don't need the world's approval to be valuable. You need your own belief to be unstoppable. The path ahead is not about proving your worth, but about trusting it, living from it, and letting it guide you even when everything else seems uncertain. Rejection is a detour, not a definition. Sometimes, the loudest messages we receive are not spoken. They come in the form of closed doors, missed calls, unanswered emails, and opportunities that slip right through our fingers. We often interpret these as silence, as abandonment, or worse, as signs that we are not good enough. But if we pause and truly listen, these moments carry a message. Every closed door is not a punishment, it is a silent guide. It is life's subtle way of rerouting us, of nudging us away from what we think we want and toward what we truly need. It takes deep trust and a shift in perspective to begin seeing rejection not as a harsh ending, but as a compassionate redirection. It is human nature to chase the things we believe will make us whole. Jobs, relationships, achievements. We set our sights on a specific path and invest all our energy in reaching it. And when that path suddenly vanishes, when the door we counted on stays firmly shut, we are left with confusion and grief. It's easy in that space to feel betrayed by life, to feel forgotten by the world. But closed doors aren't always dead ends. They are signposts. And if we allow ourselves to feel the disappointment without becoming the disappointment, we will begin to recognize that every no is often followed by a better yes. If we keep moving, we are taught to chase certainty, to make plans, to map out our lives. And so, when those plans fall apart, it feels like failure. But what if it's not failure? What if it's divine interruption? What if that rejection, that closed door, is protecting us from a place we don't belong or preparing us for something far greater than we imagined? The path we want isn't always the path we need. The person we hoped for isn't always the one meant to walk with us. The opportunity we longed for might have taken us further away from ourselves. And we wouldn't have known had life not closed that door for us. The redirection doesn't always come with clarity at first. It rarely feels good in the moment. There is often pain, confusion, and the temptation to go back and knock again and again on the door that didn't open. But healing comes when we stop trying to force open what's closed and start looking around at what's still possible. When we stop mourning the one path we thought was ours and start noticing the many others we were too focused to see. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is not getting what we wanted, because it frees us to discover what we're truly meant for. We must remember that clarity often comes after movement. We don't always see the purpose of the detour while we're on it. But as time passes, we begin to connect the dots. We realize that the door that stayed shut led us to another one, perhaps less glamorous on the outside, but deeply fulfilling on the inside. We find strength we didn't know we had, resilience we never had to use before, and a depth of self-awareness that can only be born through redirection. The guidance was there all along, hidden in the discomfort, masked by disappointment. It is not easy to release the dream attached to a closed door. It takes courage to trust the unknown, to walk forward without guarantees. But that is where the transformation lies. In the spaces where control is surrendered and faith is chosen. In the moments when you whisper to yourself, maybe this isn't the end, maybe it's the beginning. Because it often is, the door that closed may have been the only thing standing between you and the version of you waiting to emerge. You just needed the silence to hear the whisper, the pause to see the sign, the redirection to lead you home to yourself. There is a quiet protection that often comes wrapped in the disappointment of not getting what we wanted. It doesn't arrive with answers or explanations. It doesn't announce itself with a warm embrace. Instead, it hides behind the sting of rejection, behind the moment a door closes or a person walks away. And while we grieve the absence, while we question and search for meaning, we don't always realize that we may have been spared something that wasn't right for us. It's only with time, and often with tears, that we begin to see that the painful may have saved us from walking a path that would have led us further away from peace. Purpose or self-respect, sometimes we want something so badly that we lose sight of whether it is even good for us. We put our faith in people who do not see us. We chase roles that drain our spirit, and we stay in places that quietly shrink our light. We call it loyalty, ambition, determination. But deep down, we often feel that quiet discomfort, that sense that something doesn't fit. Still, we hold on tighter. We keep convincing ourselves that with just a little more effort, a little more patience, things will fall into place. So when the door finally closes, when the answer becomes a definitive no, it shatters us, not just because we've lost something, but because first, it forces us to face the truth we've been avoiding. That truth is not always about unworthiness. It is often about misalignment. And in moments of rejection, we are being nudged, sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly, toward a better fit. A relationship that nurtures instead of diminishes. A job that ignites instead of depletes. A life that reflects who we truly are, not who we thought we had to be. But when we're in the middle of the hurt, it's hard to believe we're being protected. It feels more like punishment. We don't see the storm we avoided, not only the shelter we've been denied. But slowly, as the dust settles and our vision clears, we begin to understand. We remember the things we tolerated that we shouldn't have, the signs we ignored, The exhaustion we normalized, and we realized that the rejection wasn't meant to break us. It was meant to break the illusion that we were in the right place. It was meant to remove what was not rooted in love, respect, or alignment. The pain of that removal can be intense, especially when it involves people or dreams we cherished. But there's something deeply healing in recognizing that life stepped in where we didn't. That life protected us when we didn't know how to protect ourselves. We don't always need to understand the why immediately. Sometimes the understanding comes in layers. But there is peace in trusting that not every loss is a failure. Not every goodbye is rejection in the way we think it is. Some are grace in disguise. Some are the universe taking away what cannot hold the weight of your becoming. What cannot meet you where you're headed. And while it hurts to let go, it hurts more to stay somewhere you've outgrown or were never meant to be. When we stop fighting the closed doors and begin to honor the wisdom in them, we start to reclaim our power. We start to believe that maybe we didn't lose something valuable, but instead we're guided back to our own value. We realize that the thing we thought we needed was never the source of our worth, our peace, or our purpose. And in that realization, something shifts. The bitterness softens. The heartbreak begins to heal. And in its place, something stronger is born, not just gratitude, but clarity. A quiet confidence that says, if it left, it wasn't meant to stay. If it closed, it wasn't mine to open. If it ended, it was for my protection. There is something powerful that happens when rejection forces us into stillness. In that space between what was and what will be, we are given the uncomfortable gift of reflection. At first, it feels like loss. The silence that follows a closed door can be deafening. It echoes with doubts, questions, and regrets. But if you sit with it long enough, if you resist the urge to run from it, that silence begins to speak. It whispers truths you were too busy to hear before. It sheds light on the parts of yourself you had buried under distractions and expectations. Rejection creates space, and in that space, clarity begins to bloom. We live most of our lives moving quickly, chasing, achieving, pleasing, proving. We often don't slow down until something forces us to, and rejection does just that. It pauses us. It interrupts the narrative we were writing for ourselves and invites us to look at the story with fresh eyes. We begin to ask different questions. Was I pursuing this for the right reasons? Did I truly feel seen and valued in that space? Was I aligning with my authentic self, or was I trying to become someone else to fit in? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones, and rejection gives us the rare opportunity to ask them. In the stillness, we begin to see how often we had been bending ourselves to fit into places that were never built for us. We begin to notice the subtle ways we had silenced our own needs, ignored our own intuition, and compromised our own peace. And while rejection can feel like an abrupt ending, it also marks a gentle return, a return to self. It brings us back to our own voice, our own values, our own vision. It reminds us that we do not have to earn belonging by shrinking ourselves. We begin to understand that true alignment cannot be forced. It must feel like home. That is where the transformation begins. When we stop trying to reopen the closed door and start exploring what lies around us. When we stop mourning what could have been and start honoring what is, the more we connect with ourselves, the more we realize that many of the things we were chasing were never rooted in our truth. They were rooted in fear, in longing, in a desire to be accepted. But real fulfillment does not come from external validation. It comes from living in integrity with who we are. Clarity also brings direction. Once we understand what no longer serves us, we can begin to choose differently. We stop saying yes to things that drain us. We stop apologizing for our needs. We stop waiting for others to give us permission to be ourselves. Rejection in this way becomes a teacher. Not a cruel one, but a patient one. It teaches us to listen more deeply, to choose more wisely, and to walk more confidently in our truth. It doesn't promise ease, but it offers freedom. Freedom from the need to be someone else. Freedom from the pressure to fit into boxes. Freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't align. It's often in the aftermath of rejection that we meet the most honest version of ourselves. The version that doesn't chase applause but seeks peace. The version that doesn't settle for crumbs but waits for wholeness. The version that trusts the timing of life even when the answers are not clear. That version was always there, beneath the noise and the striving. But sometimes it takes silence to hear her. It takes solitude to find her. It takes the very rejection we feared to finally come home to her. This is the gift of redirection, not just a new path, but a new understanding of who we are and what we deserve. Not just a different outcome, but a deeper connection to the self that was always worthy, always enough, and always capable of beginning again without losing her soul along the way. There are moments in life when the rejection we face feels so personal that it begins to define how we see ourselves. We carry the weight of unanswered calls, overlooked efforts, and dreams that didn't materialize. We start to question whether we were ever good enough to begin with. And slowly, almost silently, our confidence begins to erode. We hesitate to try again. We second guess our instincts. We shrink a little every time we remember the moment we were told, in words or silence, "You're not what we're looking for." But what if the problem was never with who we are, but with where we were trying to be seen? The world does not always have the eyes to recognize the depth of someone's spirit, the courage in someone's quiet strength, or the brilliance behind someone's brokenness. We often try to be understood in places that lack the language to comprehend us. We seek affirmation from people who are still trying to affirm themselves. We offer our hearts, our ideas, our talents to spaces that are not capable of receiving them. And when they reject us, we believe the rejection is a reflection of our value. But it isn't. It is a reflection of their capacity. Sometimes we think we failed simply because the fit wasn't right. But being too much for the wrong place doesn't mean you are too much. It means your depth, your truth, your light were meant for another room. And it's hard to walk away when you've already given your time, your hope, and your energy. It's hard to trust that another space exists when this one felt like your only shot. But rejection invites us to step back and ask not, what is wrong with me? But was this the right space for all of me? We are not meant to keep reshaping ourselves to fit into molds that were never designed for us. We are not here to contort our truth into a form that is more digestible to others. That is not belonging, that is survival. And surviving is not the same as thriving. Rejection often comes to wake us up from that survival mode. It forces us to see where we've been settling, where we've been compromising, where we've been hoping that someone or something would finally make space for us, but maybe we were meant to create that space ourselves. It takes courage to walk away from places that don't see us. It takes strength to stop knocking on doors that don't open. And it takes deep self-trust to believe that rejection is not a sign to give up, but a sign to look elsewhere. There is a difference between persistence and misplacement. The world is wide. The possibilities are not limited to the rooms that said no. There are places where your voice won't need to be louder to be heard, where your ideas won't need to be polished to be valued, where your heart won't need to be smaller to be accepted. We find our true belonging not by forcing ourselves to fit in, but by embracing the fullness of who we are and allowing that to lead us. Rejection is not the end of your story. It's the removal of a chapter that was never meant to hold your greatness. It is a reminder that you are not defined by the places you were denied, but by the courage you show in continuing forward anyway. When you stop seeing rejection as a failure and begin to see it as a filter, everything changes. It becomes less about being enough for them and more about being true to you. The goal is not to prove your worth to those who do not see it. The goal is to find the people, the purpose, and the places that do. The ones that don't require you to shrink, shift, or sacrifice your soul just to stay. The ones where your presence is not only accepted but celebrated. And sometimes the only way to find those spaces is to be rejected by all the ones that aren't meant for you. There are seasons in life when everything we plan begins to fall apart, and it feels like the ground beneath our feet is slipping away. In those moments, rejection doesn't feel like a redirection. It feels like abandonment. We begin to question everything: our choices, our timing, our faith, even our identity. The dreams we held so close suddenly seem out of reach. The people we leaned on disappear or turn away. The doors we knocked on don't just stay shut, they seem to vanish completely. And we are left in the quiet aftermath, wondering if we will ever find our way again. But it is in this wilderness, this uncertain and uncomfortable place, that we are often being prepared for something far greater. The path to purpose is rarely paved with ease. It is carved through setbacks, refined through silence, and shaped by the moments we did not choose. The rejection that broke our hearts is sometimes the very thing that clears the path to what truly belongs to us. When life strips us of what we thought we needed, it also invites us to reconnect with what cannot be taken away. Our resilience, our values, our voice, there is a sacred kind of growth that happens in the dark, when we are no longer distracted by noise, when the opinions of others fade into the background, and when we have no one left to perform for, something shifts. We begin to notice our own voice again. We begin to hear the whisper of our own intuition. We begin to realize that maybe what we lost wasn't ours to keep, and maybe the place we were rejected from was never capable of holding our whole truth anyway. We are conditioned to chase stability and certainty, but sometimes what we really need is to be shaken awake. Rejection has a way of doing that. It forces us to sit with the discomfort we've been avoiding. It invites us to let go of attachments that were rooted more in fear than in alignment. And as we begin to release what was never truly meant for us, we make space for something new, something more honest, more sustainable, more aligned with the person we are becoming. The beauty of being redirected is not just in what we eventually gain. It's also in who we become in the process. We become more aware of our boundaries, more in tune with our needs, more grounded in our worth. We stop tolerating what we used to make excuses for. We start showing up more authentically, not because we want to impress, but because we have nothing left to lose by being real. That transformation is quiet, but it is powerful. It doesn't always look like success from the outside, but internally, it is everything when rejection removes what is no longer aligned. It also reveals what is. It shows us what remains when everything else falls away. Our values, our passions, our quiet strengths. It teaches us to hold ourselves with more compassion and less judgment. To trust that we can rebuild, even if it takes time. To believe that we are not defined by what we didn't get, but by what we choose to become in response. That shift doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it purpose. It turns heartbreak into clarity, disappointment into redirection, and endings into beginnings. The process is never easy, and it's not supposed to be. Growth born out of rejection is growth that has roots. It is earned, not given. It humbles us, but it also empowers us. It brings us to our knees, but eventually it lifts us up, and in that rise, we discover a version of ourselves we might never have met had everything gone according to plan. We realize that redirection was not a detour, but a divine intervention. Not a punishment, but a possibility. Not a sign to stop, but a reason to start again. This time with intention, with courage, and with a deeper understanding of who we are and what we deserve.